Okay, our next question is from Amy Tannen. She says, our 2-year-old Leon Burger Wilma, who is the biggest love on the face of the earth in our home, has a bit of leash aggression. Is that something that can be repaired or just something we manage? She's good off leash, but that doesn't really work out and about in the neighborhood.
Yeah, really frustrating, especially if you have a friendly dog in other situations. So a lot of times dogs act that way because they can't get away or they can't get to what they're trying to get to. So a lot of it's frustration based. I would say for her especially, if she's good in other dog situations, it's more frustration and acting out. So aggression is probably not the correct term, even though it is called leash aggression. It's more leash frustration. So what I would do is practice with dogs that she already knows, and you want to prevent the behavior from happening. So you would have a dog that she already knows walking towards her. She's out on a leash in your neighborhood. As soon as she looks at the other dog, you're going to click and treat. If she doesn't treat reward well and doesn't take her focus off of the approaching dog, you're going to click and then start scooting backwards with a high pitch to redirect her and then start again. The likelihood of her showing any kind of negative behavior with the dog she already knows is really small.
And you're setting her up for success.
Right, and then you're just creating a behavior pattern. That's all training is. And then you'll practice with dogs at parks. So she's, 100 feet from a dog, and as soon as she sets eyes on it, click and treat, click and reward, click and back up, whatever reward you choose. And then you'll start walking past other dogs that are at great distance. Distance is your friend when you're changing any behavior pattern. And once she realizes she doesn't get to act, she doesn't have to act out, then she'll stop doing the behavior.
Okay, so you're anticipating that first visual or that first time that she gives notice to the other dog, to the approaching dog. So that may be 50 feet away, that may be 20 feet away. It just depends on your dog's boundaries.
Yes, and a lot of it will depend on another dog too. If it's a very bouncy dog, it might set them off more than a dog that's just standing there. Size of dog sometimes makes a difference. And so you just have to watch your own dog, and it's really difficult sometimes to be observant, but you want to observe your dog. They all give different signs. And if you can cue on your dog's sign of what's going to anticipate that behavior, you can catch it. And the reason I say clicker is because a clicker has no emotion. And because we're so invested in our dogs, sometimes our emotion in our voice, so we say their name, Wilma, it will transfer to the dog and she'll be more reactive. The clicker carries no emotion.
Okay. So how should she be handling her leash at that point in time? Should it be loose leash?
It's always a loose leash,
right,
yep, because you're increasing frustration with attention.
Okay. And would you say this is going to take how many sessions before you're actually walking by that dog, or it just depends on your dog's reaction?
Well, it depends on your dog's practice time. I would say with Wilma, it sounds like she's very dog friendly, and it is definitely sounding like frustration. It's hard to say without seeing it, but her transition should be quite short. But if it is truly leash aggression, or it's with a fearful dog and that fearful dog is acting out, then it could be a long time. And sometimes you don't ever fix it, you just get it where it's more manageable.
Okay. Our next question is from Spoon Dicky. How do you keep your that's a great name.
Yeah.
How do you keep your intact males from getting growly among themselves and with other dogs? There's often grumpiness among males waiting for the show ring, and my guy learned from early on that the other Leos are going to growl at him. So now I have another growly Leo. Where does it end?
I think they do socially learn to growl from other dogs sometimes. Sometimes it's not a social learning, it's an age learning. Boys get a little trash talky with other dogs, and they do a lot of posturing. And sometimes the girls are that way too. I think the boys are a little more outwardly growly because we tend to give them a little more space anyway because they're males. But what I would do is look for, again, you're going to try and anticipate the behavior. So you start with something small like eye contact, and you let the eye contact get greater before you redirect. It's about redirection. If your dog growls, it's not the end of the world. You're just going to increase space. It's like I said in the previous question, space is your distance. I think sometimes, especially when you're starting out, if your dog isn't a growly dog, you make more mistakes than someone that has a growly dog because you're unaware.
Relaxed.
And the dog comes into personal space of dogs that it shouldn't. And so I think if you can imagine it as a human, if you go to the mall and a man comes over to you and gives you a big hug and he's saying, I'm so friendly, and you're like, I don't know you. You just get a weird feeling about it. And a lot of times dogs are the same way. You might have a super friendly dog and it approaches a dog that is not that friendly. And so then you start having issues. Then your dog will have issues because every time it's approached incorrectly, it's gotten a negative response. So the growly stuff, I think as long as you handle it correctly and you keep that big physical space initially, you can probably do okay. But I would still redirect. I don't want to set my dog up to have a negative
And when you say redirect, explain that.
I would increase personal space.
Okay, increase
You can
personal
use
space.
a clicker.
So similar to our prior question, are you
Yep.
going to work in that
Well,
way?
it's all anticipation.
Right.
And so you have to know what your dog's personal signs are. They're all different, you know. I haven't had a problem with growling with any of my guys at all, but I've helped quite a few people that have. And I think the reason is because they wait for the negative behavior to happen and then correct it instead of anticipating.
So there's a lot of talk recently about a growl from a dog being their way of communicating when they are uncomfortable in a situation, and that we shouldn't be correcting that. Do you feel...
A growl is a warning,
Okay.
and if you take the warning away, the likelihood of bite is greater.
Okay.
So I agree with that to an extent, but some dogs then have learned that that gives them kind of power.
Okay.
And it's not a growl as a warning of a bite. It's more taking another dog on. It's kind of being pushy behavior. And regardless, if it's in a dog-to-dog situation, I wouldn't want my dog to growl and set off another dog, because if my dog's not growling, the likelihood of another dog reacting is less.
So set yourself up for success using that space awareness. Okay. Our next question is from Vanessa Giamo. My question would be, how do you suggest dealing with a puppy who is very anxious in the first nights, in my puppy's case it was weeks, of being in a new home and being crate trained? The crying and the howling can be tough to take.
I always like physical proximity to my puppies if I'm going to crate them overnight. So I suggest to people that they put the crate either on their bed or next to their bed, so that I would move a nightstand out of the way so that they can sleep with your smell next to them, your presence next to them, and I think that's good. The other thing I would do is make sure that they don't just go in the crate when they're going to be separate from you. So I would sit on the floor, put the puppy in the crate, hold a chew bone in the crate, leave the door open, so the puppy's spending time in the crate with it being a positive experience. Every time you walk by the crate, say, crate, throw a treat in and walk away, so they don't feel like you're going to trick them and shove them in. I don't use crates for my dogs as adult dogs, but I do use them for puppies for their own protection. And also I think it's important to teach them how to accept being in a small space, but when they go to a vet, if they go to a boarding situation, if they ever injure themselves, they need to be in a small area. And I think it's important that dogs learn to accept that. I don't think it's a great place for them to start off, but they learn how to accept it, and I think it's a safe place for them, so I would do that.
Okay, so if you put the puppy in the crate beside your bed and the puppy wakes up and is whining or howling, do you ignore that? I feel like that's what Vanessa is asking a little bit. Or do you, because you're in proximity, soothe that puppy while it's in the crate?
Well, I think as you get older, we all know that we know our dog's noises. We know when they're being pushy and when they need to go to the bathroom. And I would always take my dog out to go to the bathroom first, make sure it isn't that. And if we know that the dog's eliminated and then you put it back in the crate, I wouldn't necessarily sleep on the floor the whole night. But if I felt like I had to sit next to the crate and encourage the puppy to be okay for a little bit, I would. If the puppy still kept going out of control, I would try something. I always suggest when people come to pick up a puppy to maybe bring a towel, bring a blanket that smells like the mom, tie it in a knot so it's kind of puppy shaped, and put it in there with the puppy. That sometimes helps. If you have a second dog and the other dog is sleeping next to the crate, sometimes that helps as well.
Our next question is from Betty Ann. Our Leo, Gunther, is 6 months old and is much more mouthy than our previous Leo. What's the best way to deflect Gunther from mouthing, arms, legs, etc.? We've had many dogs over our lifetime and usually give a toy before they put their mouth on us. He does listen to leave it and off and no. We would like to nip it in the bud, but before it becomes a self-rewarding behavior. We also have a well-trained dog and they mouth at play as dogs do. Is this why Gunther thinks it's normal to try it on us? Or is he trying to be a dominant tween? He's gentle in most ways, and we humans need to polish up our training handling with his new personality.
I don't think it's dominance at all. I think he's probably just a little more stimulated than the other dogs that she's had have been. And so for me, if you've got a dog that is more mouthy, again, more exercise, one of the mistakes I think people make a lot of times is they try and play tug, play toys where they're throwing things and retrieve to kind of redirect that mouthing onto the toys. A lot of times what that does is it just kind of revs their engines a little bit and they get almost frantic, and you go to bring the toy back and they still drop the toy and bite your arm and stuff like that. So I think if you look at the mental stimulation again instead of the physical stimulation, the analogy I use with my puppy classes is when my grandchildren come over to spend the night, their bedtime is 8 o'clock. At 7:30 I don't play hide and seek because that gets them revved up. I put them in the tub, we read books, we talk, kind of get ready for bed. And because most of the craziest puppy times are early evening, by playing with toys, which we feel like is redirecting their energy, is actually revving them up. And so if you can adjust your walk schedule, and they don't have to be long, they just have to be mentally stimulating to the dogs. Lots of sniffing, lots of standing around so that they can explore. And that will make them more set up to come to bed. When you bring home, you will bring them home to the room that you spend the most time in, and you'll have your tie down ready so that you can prevent any accidents of mouthing and stuff without you getting frustrated.
Right, because this question kind of circles back around to one of the first ones we had about puppy biting. So we want to set up that leash in an area where it happens the most often, and then
so you can do a tree success.
Right. Okay, our last question is from Cindy Gimble. She says, I have a 6-month-old Leo Martin. What's been your favorite leash system for public walking? I was thinking of trying a gentle leader and would love some feedback.
I don't love gentle leaders, especially as a first or second option. What I prefer to do with a puppy is a flat buckle collar. I realize that some puppies, that's not a good option for them. First of all, I don't want them slipping out of the collar by backing out of it. So in that situation, if the head and neck are the same, I would do a martingale, so at least they stay attached. One of the things I like is a thunder leash. You can simulate that, and maybe I can demonstrate it in a little while on how to set that up. For temporary walking, it's kind of compression, so it compresses around the rib cage, and it's a pull and release system. You can buy a thunder leash also, same type thing, but I can show you how to set it up with your own 6-foot leash.
Okay.
So I would try that probably second if the martingale's not working. For me, it's always least aversive. Another trick I like is to put the dogs out in the front yard on a long rope before you go for a walk, and sit outside with them for 10 minutes or so and let them run around that initial crazy puppy energy that they're going for a walk, and then put them onto the leash and go, so that their initial crazy puppy time is down a little bit. And also sometimes people say, do you want to go for a walk? Do you want to go for a walk? And get them super excited and then take them out and yell at them to be calm. And so kind of, again, it's just about setting them up to be success, especially with a young dog.
Okay, perfect. Well, then let's take a break and we'll get a dog out and show how to set up the thunder leash.
Okay, let's do it.
All right, thanks.